Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can see the video. I am recording this. Welcome to Earth Science 110, Intro to Climate Science. This is an unscripted presentation, and mostly I wanted to use it as an opportunity to both test out this type of video delivery, this type of conversation, and also just to provide a little bit of a way of introducing the topic to you and to go through some of the textbooks. So I'm not going to spend a long time on this. And let me just change something here. There we go. But I do want to use it as an opportunity both to sort of introduce the topic a little bit and to give you some strategies for studying in the textbook. Here you should be able to see the cover for the textbook. It's Climate Change, the Science of Global Warming and Our Energy Future, the second edition. Authors Edmund Mathis and Jason Smearden. And I really urge you to get that as soon as possible, as I emphasized in the email that I had sent out to everybody a week ago or a couple of weeks ago. So check that out. If you did not get it, look for it in your spam folder. If you did not get that email, you can reread it in the announcements section of the course website. There's a ton of stuff going on in climate change today, this week. All seems never ending. And I don't want to burden you too much with that yet, but I will be posting some of the latest news that's going on. There's a hurricane forming that may impact Florida that's making a little bit of news. We've had the fires in the Amazon, fires in Africa. There's floods, recovery efforts still going on in the middle of the United States. So just a whole bunch of stuff happening. But let's start at the beginning with the textbook. And when you get your textbook, and this will hold true for just about any class, take a chance just to kind of leaf through it. Make sure you have the right one. You can check that by looking at the title page, and it will have the correct date, copyright 2018. I'm showing you here the Kindle edition of the text. I also have the printed edition. I have not done a side-by-side comparison, but they should be pretty close. But if you find anything that doesn't look quite right to you, especially in the Kindle edition, if you're buying that version of it, let me know, because sometimes the figures in those editions tend to be a little bit different and maybe not even as clear as you might find in the printed copy. Okay, if you want to read the dedication, here's the place where I wanted to start today, because it gives you an outlook of what's ahead in the course. We will cover all 4 parts, and we will cover all 13 chapters of the book. We roughly do 1 chapter a week, and that's going to be a good amount of reading, a good amount of studying, which is why I wanted to take this opportunity to give you some strategies for getting more out of the textbook, giving you some pointers and things to pay attention to and things that you can pay less attention to or skip over. I don't like to use that word skip over, because all parts of a book are important, but I will be focusing on certain sections, the sections that provide most basic understanding to you. This textbook is written for both introductory students as well as more advanced students. The more advanced topics, as you'll find, are generally put in boxes, but you're welcome to take a look at those, of course. You should never limit your learning, but I know students like to be as efficient as possible too. So, all right. The prologue, I asked you to read that, and please do. It gives you both interesting information about the book, as well as sort of a background for the entire book. So it's kind of a big picture. And I think that's important as you go into this topic. There's so many things coming at you in the news media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your favorite social media is. Lots of stuff being shared, lots of stuff in the TV news, lots of stuff on internet news. So it's useful to have a framework for understanding where all that news fits into the topics that we're going to cover. And the prologue does a good job at that, just sort of helping you frame the kinds of things we're hearing about. The preface is normally something that you might necessarily not read in a book, but again, I do recommend that you read this because it's an introduction. It's to what's in the book, what the different parts of the book is, and how it works. Key points: the back of the envelope calculations, the historical notes. I know I can highlight this. Let's see if I need to do that. Well, no, okay. In any case, let's see, annotate. So here you have historical notes, back of the envelope calculations, these kinds of things that can help you out and provide you with this sort of background that you need for reading the book. So one of the first things you really want to do is check out, how am I going to read this book? How is this book arranged? How can it help me? How can I make the best use of it? Those are questions you should be asking with any book that you take a look at for the first time. So here's the prologue. You should have read it by now. If not, just get on it, talking about the difference between weather and climate, the different parts of the climate system, how we separate facts from fiction in this, and facts from fears, excuse me, but we want to also separate facts from fictions as well, and how we face climate change in all of these whirlwind of things that you hear about it, from the doomsday scenarios to the optimistic scenarios. How do we face that? We'll talk about that a little bit as well. So here again, in the prologue, it talks about how the book is arranged. All right. So in the Kindle edition, it's a little bit maybe not as easy as flipping through a book, but take a look at the big part. Just click down through this table of contents to start with, go all the way to the end. See what's in it. See what these pages look like. Here, should we be alarmed? It's at the very end of the book, but it's something you might want to take a look at now. There's different notes. So as you're reading through each chapter, you'll see that there's references for each one of the topics. Different sentences have referred to specific data sets and specific scientific publications. So you'll want to take a look at that, different explanations as well. There's a glossary in the back, and this is a really excellent place to get definitions and to check your understanding, and really just so come back to the glossary. Here's the word climate, the average weather for a particular region for a significant period of time. You might want to highlight that one specifically. So the glossary can help you understand what you're reading. So make use of it, because understanding is the key. Bibliography, you might not do too much with, although I always find it interesting. I like to know what papers, what resources have gone into the book. There's stuff coming out every day, new publications, but here, if you're interested in certain things, let's say, for example, the basics of wind energy, there's a nice link for it. And the index will tell you where things are. So if, for example, you wanted to look up information on, let's just say, what's a good one? The Atlantic Ocean. My favorite topic, chlorophyll in the Atlantic Ocean. Here it takes you to that and takes you to those figures. So we'll be getting back to that a little bit later on. All right, so once you've gone through that and kind of looked around a little bit, I suggest that you then look at each part separately, and especially the first part. So here we see 4 different chapters in this first part. If you've read the syllabus thoroughly, you will have noted that the first exam, which comes up in 4 weeks, covers the first 3 chapters. So the atmosphere, the world ocean, and ocean atmosphere interactions. If you open that further, you'll see the subheadings for each chapter. So the atmosphere, the composition of air, etc. Just take a look at those different parts and familiarize yourself with them. The topics here give you a clue to what that particular section is about. And as you scroll through the text, here you notice is, at least on my screen, it's a green box called back of the envelope calculations. These are things for those of you that want to look at a more mathematical approach. We do talk about mathematics. We don't do much mathematics, although we do a little adding, subtracting, dividing, multiplying, maybe plugging some numbers in a formula. Nothing that should frighten you. But it is an opportunity for you to sort of check your understanding of things. Otherwise, you can go buy these green boxes. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them. And if we do come to those, I will point that out to you, that make sure you take a look at a particular box. But this first one is not necessary. You'll see these things in here, these equations. Fear not, they're just equations. And I'm not expecting you to be familiar with moles of gases, the universal gas constant, and those kinds of things. Equations provide quantitative ways of describing many of the things that we're talking about. So try to just read them for understanding what the equation is about, but don't get too hung up on memorizing them or too freaked out that I might ask you to plug numbers into it. In the textbook of the print edition here, these figures come up a little bit larger. I think this will enlarge. Yes, so if you double click on the figures, you get a nice enlargement of those figures. I would even perhaps recommend that you take a screenshot. If you don't know how to do that, check in Google, and in 2 seconds you'll figure out how to take a screenshot, because figures are important. I won't talk about the specifics of this particular figure right now, but it is a good graphical representation of pressure, air pressure, as you go higher in our atmosphere. So check that out. Don't ignore the figures. You can even make them super wide, because they are important. And the book doesn't have a ton of figures, but again, you want to make sure that you follow those figures. The text also will allow you to, it also links to those figures. So one of the advantages, again, of the Kindle edition is that when you click on that, well, it should open it, but it doesn't. Okay, so, but it gives me a definition of the word figure. My expectation is, so here, for these underlined words, here's another way to check your understanding of words. And one strategy for being successful with words are to make flashcards, to make a list of the terms, to later write out their definitions and practice writing out their definitions. One of the hardest things that students have in science classes is to become familiar with the vocabulary. So work on your vocabulary, because we will talk about convection and conduction and those types of things in the semester as the semester goes along. So when you look at a textbook, you should really have a pencil or something in hand. The act of taking notes, so writing with a pen or a pencil, taking notes, actually makes your brain work better. And it connects those neurons so that when you want to recall that information, you remember it better than if you just do nothing, if you just read it. So even if you're never going to look at those notes again, take notes, because it helps your brain make more sense of the information that you're taking a look at. So I always emphasize studying a textbook versus reading a textbook. There's a big, big difference between reading a textbook and studying it. As many of you know, as many of you that have done college for a year or two or longer know, you really have to tear apart a text, and that's how you go about it. All right, moving on. There are some subheadings. So in this heading, mechanisms of heat and mass transfer, you can see that it's broken down into subheadings as well. Again, just giving you some idea of how the book is arranged. This subsection, the convective motions of the atmosphere, might be something that you want to read through and stop and then go back again. Ask yourself at the end of this section, what was it about? What did I just read? If you can't answer that question, turn off the television, turn off your phone, turn off the radio, and read it again and ask yourself again. Focused studying of 20 minutes can be worth 2 hours of unfocused studying. It's your time. You can figure out how you want to spend it, but I prefer to study in short bursts, and then I don't have to study anymore. All right, here's another box, more sections, more figures. Of course, you can ignore this box as well. We're not going to talk about thermodynamics in this class. If you're interested in that topic, you can always feel free to email me about it. Of course, again, we can enlarge the figures, and all those sorts of things. All right. It also, your textbook links to specific web pages. So you have an opportunity to do that within the textbook as well. That's, again, one of the advantages of a textbook, an electronic textbook versus a printed one. Whatever one you have is fine. It's up to you. Going to those links isn't necessarily anything that's going to be something you're going to want to do for the course sake, but just out of your own interest, you have that opportunity. We will talk about the structure of the atmosphere, especially talk about what's going on in the troposphere, but there are also some very interesting things going on in the stratosphere, and we'll come to that topic later on in the semester. All right, just dialing through here. Anything in blue, again, you can ignore to some extent, although this might be a topic that interests some of you, the ozone hole. Feel free to take a look at that. And as you continue to go through the text, see much of the same kinds of things. Again, expand these figures, read the figure captions. Some of the information that you'll be asked about will come from the figure captions, so don't ignore that part of the book. If you like history, and I know many students are interested in history, here's an interesting historical note on Carl Rossby, who discovered something called Rossby waves. We probably won't talk too much about those, but they're very important for understanding the role of the Arctic in our modern day weather and climate. So you can read about that. All right, the very end of the book are these key points in this chapter, and I definitely recommend that you read those. In fact, you may want to dial ahead to the key points before you even read the chapter. Then you have some idea what's ahead. You have some idea of the language. You have some idea if it's a OMG, WTF type of chapter for you, or whether it's, oh, I kind of know this stuff. Some of this stuff will be very unfamiliar, adiabatic heating and cooling. Not likely that it's something that you know about, but if you've ever put air in a tire and touched the needle where you're putting the air in, or if you've ever let air out of a can of air, you've witnessed or observed adiabatic heating in the case of the bicycle tire, or adiabatic cooling in the case of the can of air. So I will try where possible and to the extent possible, since we don't meet regularly to point those kinds of things out to you as we encounter them in the chapter. And that's it. There are no end of questions, end of chapter questions in the book. However, in the course website itself, I have taken the opportunity to some extent, go through the different parts, the different sections here, and provide you with additional information, particularly videos, in some cases written material, and even occasionally figures that will help you understand that. And then at the end of each section of the chapter, in the course modules, you will also find some quizzes to test yourself. So take an opportunity, make sure you take those quizzes, the end of chapter quizzes that are due each week, and the every 4 weeks exams that you'll take each week are based on those practice quizzes. So just a little bit more help. All right, since there's no one listening at this time, I won't ask for questions because I won't get any, I hope. But in any case, if you do have any questions about this video, this presentation, if there's anything that's not clear to you, or if you have questions about anything at all, I always encourage you. I'm always open to your emails. Please shoot me an email through the inbox in Canvas, or feel free to email me directly at exploreworldocean@gmail.com. I'm really looking forward to this class. I have a whole sabbatical, a whole semester off. This is my only class this semester, and so you're my focus. My sabbatical is designed to take a deeper look at climate science and teaching climate science. So I will be learning along with you. All right, that's it for today. Shoot me any questions. Have a good day. Thanks for listening.